Hey, Freddie! Freddie Prinze Jr., I'm down here! Hey, Freddie! In the truck! Freddie! It's me, Brock. Do you want to ride?
How far are you going?
Cardboard City. Hop in!
You sure you got room in there?
Yeah, let me just move my cardboard here. Freddie, you know, since we're driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck, I think we should sing a song called I'm Driving Down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck. What do you think about that?
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Why don't you start out singing the word truck, okay?
Okay.
I'm driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup.
Truck?
1940. I'm driving down Highway
40.
in my big old pickup.
Truck.
Now old. I'm driving down Highway
40.
in my big
Old.
pickup.
Truck.
Now everything. I'm driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck. They sing like girls. I'm driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck. Now like fishies. Like monsters. Biggies. Like Tom Brokaw.
I'm driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck. Katie?
Breathe. Wait for it. Big finish. I'm driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck. Oh, man.
Hi guys, it's Miss Meyer with another episode of the Miss Meyer Show. So what we're going to be talking about today, and I've got all my screens open here, and that's why I'm looking all over the different place. So we're going to be talking about Chapter 9, Part 1. Now this is in your textbook, which is right here. Hold on, I've got to grab mine. Remember, because I have a physical one. And you don't. It's because I'm the teacher and I'm cool like that. So for all of our new students, well, you've already had one Miss Meyer Show episode. So for our new students, though, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the class. I hope you love the Miss Meyer shows because they are just the best ever, right? And and I encourage you. You want to participate? Tell me something. You want something included in the Miss Meyer Show? Let me know. And I will be more than happy to see what we can do. As long as it's, nothing off the wall crazy, please, because I'm not willing to do that. And don't ask me to do things that are, number one, going to kill me, or number two, land me in jail. So anything else within reason, I will consider it. All right, so we're talking about we're not talking, I'm going to erase everything I just said. All gone, goodbye. All right, start over. Hi guys, this is Miss Meyer with the Miss Meyer Show, and today we are going to be going over Chapter 8, Part 2. So that is the second portion of your Chapter 8, and that's going to begin, I believe it does begin, where did I start? Yeah, we're going to start on page 293, and we're going to go all the way to, I think it is 311. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much where we're going to go, was to 293 to 311. So, let's begin without further ado. So, we're going to talk about, in this portion, about the populists. So, before when we were talking about the progressives, and we're talking about the Bourbon Democrats, we're talking about the Louisiana lottery ring, we're talking about all these people that were kind of really coming up in Louisiana. Now we're going to talk about how the populists are changing things. So from what we talked about in class and in my last show, we saw that the majority of people in Louisiana were very poor, and they did not feel as though they had adequate representation from, representatives in Louisiana government, because the majority of them were so poor, and they didn't feel that there was anybody really speaking on their behalf, and that they were kind of getting, kind of shortchanged when it came to dealing with the government and government issues. So a new political party formed on the basis of being there for the people, to being someone like of the people and by the people, that kind of, attitude. This new group was called the Populist, and they were called that because they became very popular. When you're popular, it's something I have never been. It's never happened, but when you have something that's popular, that means a lot of people like it. Like, for example, it's very popular nowadays to have water in a bottle. Very few people say, oh, let me just grab you a drink from the faucet. I mean, some people do, whatever, that's cool, but it is very popular today to have bottled water, if you know what I mean. Now I've got to drink some since I've opened it, now I have to drink it. It's like basically saying, drink me, like an Alice in Wonderland. I have something attached. I have a permanent retainer. I know, off the wall comment, but I do, because one of the other reasons I was not ever popular was that I had really, really bad teeth, and I had braces, serious braces. And not only did I have the braces, I had headgear. So I had to wear headgear. Okay. It's like this. It went to the top like that. And I can't even begin to. It was terrible. And so when I had to wear my braces for 5 years, y'all. 5 years. So I still have the permanent retainer, and it's been quite some time since I've had the braces removed. I mean, I'm old, but the permanent retainer is still back there. And sometimes, I feel like I've got something caught on it, because every time I drink, I was just drinking the water, and I feel it. But anyway, back to what I was talking about, and this happens a lot. I get distracted, but whatever. Okay. So the populists were popular. They were popular with the people in Louisiana because most of the people, like I said, were poor. And so they felt that the populists would be the ones that would do a very good job of representing them in government as far as the people of Louisiana. Now, their whole thing, what they were running on, their platform, their all that's called a platform. They kind of decided that they wanted to help the farmers and the poor people of Louisiana find a way to kind of get out of this cycle of debt. Because even though, we had the whole Louisiana Lottery Company, and we had the progressives that were saying, oh, we're going to change things for the better in Louisiana, the majority of people, the poor people, really didn't see a lot of that benefit. So that's where the populists came in, and they were the ones that really said, okay, we're here for you. We're here to work for you. What do you need for us? Now, the populist demands, what they were working for and what they said what we want and what we are fighting for is that we believe that farmers and poor people, especially farmers, because Louisiana has and always, well, not always, but it was in the past and still is very agricultural. So when the populists were saying, we're going to go and we're going to, help you, the majority of people are going to be here for you, we're going to do things on your behalf. The majority of people in Louisiana were farmers because we were agricultural. So the populists sought to represent the ordinary people. They generally believe that poor people, especially farmers and kind of industrial workers, laborers, basically things like that, should have a greater influence in government policy and a larger share of the economic benefit of American prosperity, because there were more of them. So you had the majority of people, not only in Louisiana, but in the United States as a whole during this time, that didn't have a lot of money, and they didn't have the ability to, have access to things that other people did that had a lot of money. So the populists were extraordinarily popular, not only in Louisiana, but all throughout the rural South, because the majority of people were poor. That's just how it was. That would be like, okay, I mistakenly did this, which I will never do this again. I will never, ever, ever go to another Saints game that is not in the Dome. I will never do that, put myself through that again, because I was in a sea of cowboy jerseys and was like, oh, it's driving me insane that I would listen. They were making me crazy because I felt like there was no one to sit with me and really represent the Saints. It was just me. Even my fair-weathered husband over there was like, I knew this was going to happen. I was really upset at that game. So much so that we had to leave because it couldn't stay. So I felt that there was no Saints representatives, that was just little old me with my black and gold being like, ooh, go Saints. And they were playing like trash. But I love my Saints, right? I love you guys, black and gold all the way. I just thought that your game against the Cowboys was not your best performance, and I had to leave. So I will gladly go to a Saints game as long as it is in the Superdome, because I feel that I am amongst my peers who love the Saints and feel the passion and the vitriol that I have for my football team, and not like I was with the Cowboys when it was just little old me, and I was getting very upset. We literally had to leave with a game before it was over. Anyway, so that's kind of like how the farmers and the people of Louisiana and across the rural South really felt about the populists. They were, hey, finally, there's somebody to be on my behalf. There's somebody to speak out for me. There's someone saying, you mean it, you make a difference, and your voice counts. So it grew to extreme popularity throughout the South, including Louisiana. Now, in 1896, two political parties joined. And because we are in the playoffs, and because I love football, I'm kind of using my wonderful black and gold. I'm telling you guys, I love you guys. I love you, black and gold. For real. I had to get that out there. Okay, truly. There you go. But, so everything's got a football analogy to it right now. But, okay, so we as Saints fans, we have a kind of our own little rivalry going, right, with Atlanta. I mean, I don't know why. I really don't know why. I couldn't tell you. But our rival, one of our big ones, is Atlanta. Now, we don't like, the Cowboys aren't our favorite. Obviously, any team that plays us is not our favorite team. But the only team that I can think of here in Texas for me and for some of my other Louisiana supporting friends is that we don't like the Cowboys either. But our main enemy are the Falcons. And so, if necessary, in order to defend beat the Falcons, I would join with the Cowboy fans and say, hey, if you're playing the Falcons, I'm rooting for you because I hate you, but I hate the Falcons even more. So, not that these parties hated one another, but they were joined together at this time for a bigger purpose, and that was to defeat the Bourbon Democrats. So they decided, the two groups, the populists joined with the Republicans, which sort of progressivists. So the Populist Party and the Republican Party joined together to fuse together into one group to defeat the Bourbon Democrats in Louisiana. They said, listen, I know my hair is so bad, y'all. If I took it down, it would be like, it would be that bad. It would be like Rosanna, Dana. If those of you who know anything about Saturday Night Live, that's how bad it would be. So it is like, this is about as tame as I can get it at this point. And I can't really move too much because if I do, it's going to just go crazy. So anyway, so the populists, they got together with the Republicans. The enemy of my enemy is my friend or something like that. That kind of stuff. And they said, hey, naturally we would be, going against one another. But because of what's going on, we're going to work together because we really want to defeat the Bourbon Democrats. And so they called it the fusion. So when you fuse two things together, that's fusion. That's a science term, whatever. That's just what it was called. It was called the fusion. It's how I remember it. And they joined together to appeal and saying out to the poor people of Louisiana, listen, vote us. Don't vote for these Bourbon Democrats because we, as the populists and the Republicans, this party, this fusion party, we are here for you. Don't go for them. We're here for you. Okay? So by doing this, you had so many people that said, you know what, you're right. I'm really not represented very well by the Bourbon Democrats. I'm not. So I'm going to go and I'm going to vote your way. So what this did was it took away power from those Bourbon Democrats. And the Bourbon Democrats, as you guys remember, the whole thing that they wanted was to return Louisiana to the way that it was before the Civil War. That was their goal. So when you had the populists and the Republicans working together to go against the Bourbon Democrats, their whole platform of getting people to, getting Louisiana to go back to the way it was before the Civil War was crumbling because they did not have the votes for people to keep them in office. Now, excuse me, during this time, we begin to see a lot more segregation. Now, the Civil War is over. Reconstruction is over. So Louisiana, and especially like the Bourbon Democrats, whose MO was to go backwards instead of forwards, started putting into place segregation and to separating the races. Slavery is outlawed. The Constitution amendments say no more slavery. It is against the Constitution. Can't do it. So segregation was kind of like a solution to the problem of the Constitution. Basically, that's exactly what it was. It was they knew, not when I say they, I say just the individuals that wanted this, not everybody. That's what I mean. They knew that they could not reinstate slavery in Louisiana or across the South. So a new kind of plan, I guess you could say, was approached in order to kind of separate people based on race, color, and all this, whatever. Completely stupid, but that's what happened. So that's this whole process. So during this time period, this is after the Civil War, this is right in the turn of the century. This is before World War I, way before World War II. This is what's going on at right around the turn of the century, 1900 era-ish, okay? All right, so segregation means separating based on race, and that's what was happening here in the South. So they would have everything, two different things. They would have a hospital for African Americans and a hospital for, white people. They would have a school for, African American children and a school for white. Everything was separate because they wanted to separate them. They believed that intermingling would only create a problem, which is like insane considering, and I think about it because I am biracial. So I'm like, that's, but this is what was happening. And it didn't really stop. I mean, it really didn't stop until, the late 60s, 70s. Even today, there's still some of that. So, I mean, you really think about it. So what the segregation was, like I said, it was a way to separate the races from one another. And a lot of it was fear mongering, like saying, oh, you've got to stay separate. We can't let you guys intermingle because it's dangerous and things like that, which are totally not true. And eventually people started saying, wait, I don't think this is such a great idea, and kind of really bucking that system. But at the turn of the century in the New South, that was Louisiana, we do see segregation at its zenith, and that means when it's completely really big time. Segregation, like I said, was a separate but equal. And during this time period is when we see the Homer Plessy case, Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, if you are going to be, I don't know. I mean, you probably study it. You'll probably study it in everything, but I've studied it a bunch of times. Especially in my graduate courses. Plessy versus Ferguson. This is a major court case. And this is what established the precedent of separate but equal. Something that's going to say absolutely, if you can have two separate things as long as they are equal. Well, I'm going to show you how that's just not possible in a second. So what it was is that Homer Plessy decided that, he sued under this against Ferguson. It was a Supreme Court thing that said, it isn't fair that there were different rail cars, because remember, this is before any kind of vehicles, definitely for planes. So they had, the majority of them were railroads. They were traveling with railroads throughout, Louisiana and the South. And we're going to talk about railroads in a little bit. But there was a car for black people and a car for white people. And Homer Plessy, he boarded a Louisiana railroad, which means that this is a big case here in Louisiana. And actually, Brown versus Board of Education, well, that was, yeah, I think that was Louisiana too. I'm thinking of the Topeka one. And Ruby Bridges was in Louisiana. I'll tell you, we are like crazy important. This state is like crazy important. So Homer Plessy, he boarded this rail car for whites only. And when he got on there, you can imagine, you would have thought that he walked on there and was like crazy, but he didn't, but the people went insane. It went totally insane. He was arrested, he was put into jail, he went before a judge, he was convicted of a crime. I mean, all these crazy things. Eventually the case got so much popularity, it went all the way to the Supreme Court. Remember this. This is something a lot of people don't even know, even adults don't know. A lot of people don't know this, and it makes me insane. One of the many things that drives me crazy, right? The Supreme Court only hears cases that are based on the Constitution. They do not hear criminal or family law or bankruptcy. They don't hear any of that. They only hear cases that are based on the Constitution. So when Homer versus Plessy versus Ferguson, it went to the Supreme Court because they said it was unconstitutional to separate based on race. Okay? Now the Supreme Court ruled that it was not unconstitutional to separate based on race as long as they separate things were equal. This makes very little sense when you think about it. Now, obviously, you can say, okay, well, that's fine. You know, I'm going to grab, let me see something I've got two of around here. Let me see. I'm in my office area here, so I don't know what I've got two things of. Hold on. Oh, wait. Hold on. I'm down here. Un momento. All right, so... un momento. Oh my goodness. Still looking. Hang on. You can fast forward this little part if you want. Trying to find something. Oh my goodness. I'm not doing a very good job of it. Alright. Well, you're going to have to just deal with this, people, because this is what I've got next to me. So you're going to have to deal with it. Alright, so let's just say we've got two things. Alright, we have in my hands here, I have two eyeshadow palettes, okay? Because that's what I've got next to me, and that's what you're just going to have to follow along, okay? So I've got two eyeshadow palettes in my hand. They're both eyeshadow palettes, and forgive them how dirty they look, because they are used. You've got one here, this is an eyeshadow palette, and this is an eyeshadow palette. Now, for people that don't know a lot about makeup or whatever, this one is Revlon, and this one is Urban Decay. Now, Urban Decay is, and I'm not saying totally, but in my opinion, for me, what I like to use, Urban Decay, I think, is much, it's more expensive. It gives you a different variety. This one only has 4. This one has, and like I said, forgive me how dirty it is, because it is used a lot. This one's got a lot. Okay, these pigments don't last pretty long. These will last you all day, out for real. So this one comes in this kind of little plastic case that can, easily breakable and kind of flimsy. This one comes in like this smooth velvety box that's got its own little mirror in it and stuff like that. So while they're both eyeshadow palettes, one's Isabel's, one's mine. Guess which one she uses. Okay. So, but while they're both eyeshadow palettes, it's easy to see that they are not equal. They're just not. One is better than the other, or in my opinion. I'm not saying totally, I'm just saying in my opinion, one is a little bit better than the other. And the price reflects it too. So, but anyway, that's it. Just and it wasn't just something as trivial as makeup, although I do not think makeup is trivial in any means, but still. So, you've got two things that are technically the same thing, but there's no way, shape, or form that they are considered to be equal. It just isn't. Okay? So that's what the whole Plessy versus Ferguson was. And it was not overturned, or segregation was not ended until Brown versus Board of Education. Much, 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 much later. In like 1954. So 1950, late 1950s, something like that. All right. Which was not a goal of progressivism. So I'm kind of going through, in case you don't understand, you can see that I am going through your test. Because I've got three computers, one tablet, my phone, the textbook, and it's all for you guys. It's all information to make sure that you've got your stuff covered, okay? So I'm going through, that's why I might be skipping around a little bit. So progressivism was a political party, or, you know, they stood for everybody, right? That was their whole goal, that I am here to represent you, Louisiana people, or you, the people of the South. But because of segregation and because of what kind of ways to kind of disenfranchise black voters, it really truly wasn't for everyone. Women at this time, we couldn't even vote. We weren't even considered able to do that. We didn't have the basic right to even do so. Any women, white, black, yellow, brown, any color, we were not even at that point yet, okay? But with the progressives, and they're sitting there saying, I'm here to represent you. I'm here to give you a voice. As long as you met our requirement for what we say is a citizen. Now, progressivism, even though they, said this, they tried to really disenfranchise black voters, and they tried to do it in a way that was sneaky, that they could kind of get around it, because the Constitution, the amendment of the Constitution, I think it was like the 16th, 15th, I think it was I can't think right now. It was either the 17th, the 15th, or the 16th. One of them said you cannot discriminate on basis of anything in a voting. You can't prevent people from voting based on previous servitude. You can't do that. So they started, especially in the South and Louisiana, started to look for ways to prevent African Americans and poor white people too from voting. But they could not constitutionally do that. So they started putting up these little voting issues, saying you couldn't vote unless you did this. Can y'all see Tigger on my bed right here? He's getting so old, guys, and he won't eat. He wants to only be fed little pieces of turkey. He won't eat any kind of food. If anybody has an advice to help me feed this cat, because it's really going crazy, he will only eat turkey meat like from the deli, and only hand-fed in little bitty portions. He's only got like 4 teeth. He's got like no teeth. And so I'm trying to see what I can possibly get him to eat other than turkey, because he gets really angry at whoever's feeding him because we're not going fast enough, and he bites us. So anyway, if you have any suggestions, let me know, because I love my Tiggy, but still. But anyway, so they started putting into place these kind of like voting issues to kind of say, oh, well, you can vote as long as this happens, or you can vote as long as XYZ or whatever. And, it was craziness. So the things they put into place, I'm tell you about a little bit of them, are these things. First is that in order to vote, you had to prove the place and date of your birth and your parents' birth. Okay, you had to provide birth certificates. Well, this is a problem, because slaves were not issued birth certificates. Therefore, they could not produce a birth certificate for themselves, and even if they could, they definitely didn't have it for their parents. So they say, well, you don't have birth certificates, you can't vote. And poor people, many of them weren't born in hospitals or registrars. A lot of them were just born at home on the farm. They didn't have all this information. So the people that could produce these documents obviously had enough money to, be born somewhere where they could get a birth certificate. And so it really kind of disenfranchised. And when I say disenfranchised, that means not allow. Okay? They couldn't vote. The next thing, and then they said, you know what? I don't think this is fair. You can't do this anymore. They said, okay, we're not going to do this, proving of birth or birth record. We're not going to do that anymore. So they come up with another way to disenfranchise the black voters and the poor white voters. And that's called the literacy test. And they said, okay, as long as you can read this, you can vote. Well, this was, it was illegal to teach the slaves how to read. It was illegal. And there was not any public school system. Kids were not required to go to school. So people that were living out in the rural areas of Louisiana that were very poor, they didn't have that luxury to send their children to a formal school to learn to read and write because they needed them on the farm or they needed them in doing something to help out the family. And as far as slaves went, it was again, you could get killed if you were teaching. You found out you were teaching a slave how to read and write. So by putting this there, you'll say, oh, you can't read and write, you can't vote. And it wasn't like they were giving them little books like, Go John Go or whatever, those little books, whatever. They were giving them pieces of the Constitution to be able to read and to tell them what they read. Because they can't just say, okay, I can read it. They had to explain it as well. Well, there are a ton of people, my husband, who couldn't read the Constitution and tell me what it's about. He really couldn't. Trust me, he really couldn't because we have tests. We're very, very competitive and we're like, I bet I can do this and you can't. I bet I can do this and you can't. And so as I was in college and getting my bachelor's in social studies education, I would always say, can you answer this? I bet you don't know how to do this. And it was always stuff like that. But anyway, I mean, you've got people today that can't do that. And so that's what it was saying, basically. Unless you were wealthy enough to send your child, to send your son, because women, we couldn't even vote at this point. We were women. Our jobs, what? We didn't even have the opportunity to even try to vote. But at this time, as you can see, I'm sorry, I have to drink some water. I'm getting all cotton. I was just like, ugh. And this happens because, I'm really get excited about social studies. I have a problem. I swear. I absolutely love it. I had a student, one of you guys, not going to name names, but said, Ms. Meyer, can you please lower your voice and slow down? You're giving me a headache. And it's because I get so excited. I'm sorry. I really am. And I get so excited about it. And I apologize. Just imagine, it could be a lot worse. I could be your mother and would be always on you saying, hey, guess what this and guess what that. My poor children, they say, Mom, everything in life is not a lesson. It's not a history lesson. You don't have to constantly teach us things. Whatever. I still do it. But anyway, so now they have this literacy clause, which is just so unfair. So eventually it says, hey, guess what? Well, you know what? Literacy clause is unfair. You can't do that anymore. So then they said, okay, we're going to put into place, you can't read, you can't produce a birth certificate, fine. All you need to do is pay the polling tax and you'll be able to vote. The polling tax, these people didn't have the money they were desperate. I mean, they were like barely making it by. Do you think that they had the money to pay a poll tax? So if it came down to it, if it came down to either feeding your family and keeping your family alive or voting, the majority of people were going to say, I want to keep my family alive, unless they really didn't like their family. Or, like, I'm sorry, old Aunt Bertha, I can't help you out, I've got to go vote, But most of the people were like, I'm not going to do that. I've got to keep my family living. I don't have extra money to go and pay to vote. Are you crazy? I don't have that. So they said, fine. You don't have the polling tax. You can't read and write. You can't produce birth certificates. Fine. If your grandfather voted, you can vote. If you can tell me and you can say to me, yes, oh, my grandfather, he voted, then you can vote. Hello? In the Civil War, during the antebellum South, there were no slaves voting. Therefore, that disenfranchised every former slave in Louisiana and the South right off the bat. The same thing for the poor white people of Louisiana. While they could say, oh yeah, my grandfather voted, a lot of their grandfathers were not even participating in in elections because they themselves were poor farmers. And, you know, a lot of them were dead. How can you prove that they did this? How can they say, oh, my grandpa voted? Well, okay, where is he? Oh, he died, 7 years ago. You don't have the birth certificate to prove it. So therefore, guess what? So all of these things were enforced for the sole purpose of disenfranchising black voters and poor white voters. So that was all what was going on at this time. Now, sorry, where are we going now? Where am I going? Okay. Now we're talking about the railroads, okay? So the railroads at this time make it a lot easier for people to vote. Now, the poor people in Louisiana that were living in the rural areas, I mean, like way out, and there are some people that still, I don't even know all the parishes in Louisiana. I couldn't tell you. Like, if I had students say, oh, I live in so-and-so Louisiana, I'm like, where? Or I live in Bush, Louisiana. Like, what? Something like that. But they didn't have access to polls. I mean, they couldn't get somewhere. They couldn't leave the farm for a week or whatever and go vote in the nearest big city. They just couldn't do it. So when railroads come around, it makes it so that people can not only travel to vote, but that people can move out into big areas. I mean, you've got people going to different places that they've never been before in Louisiana. Like places, I think the most beautiful place, and this is my own personal opinion, whatever, take it or leave it. I think one of the most beautiful places in Louisiana is Natchitoches. It is so pretty there. It is so, so, so pretty. I think it's gorgeous in Natchitoches. It's beautiful, unbelievably so. And this is like this little town that when they talk about Louisiana, they don't necessarily say, oh, I want to go to Natchitoches. They would say, I want to go to the French Quarter. I want to go to New Orleans. I want to go to this place or whatever. But Natchitoches is extraordinarily gorgeous. And it's not one of these big main parishes or cities that, everybody talks about. But when railroads started to come around and people were starting to be able to travel to these areas, little places like Natchitoches and, Shreveport and all these other kind of places really started to pop up as big places where people were wanting to live. And when you had people that were wanting to live there, you had industry that would come as well. I personally live in a suburb of Dallas. Now, when I moved here, it was so adorable. I likened it, now I'm coming from Chalmette. I said, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm living in Pleasantville or on the Andy Griffin show. I'm in Mayberry, is what I always called it. I'm in Mayberry. Well, now a lot of people want to move to where I am in Mayberry. It must be because I'm here. They must know. They must be like, Jennifer Meyer lives here, so we're all coming. That's probably what's happening. So, anywhere I go, I'd have this problem, obviously. But, so now, though, that all these people are coming here, we're getting all of this big stuff. We're getting the highways getting made bigger. We're getting all these big box stores, and our little bitty quaint town is not so little bitty and quaint anymore. So when railroads started to go around and make places in Louisiana accessible, we start to see little places grow into bigger places and bigger places grow into huge cities. So this is when it booms. And now people that before would never have been able to vote or to even say, hey, I want my say in what's going on. Now they had access to a way of getting there to cast their vote. So now you've got the voting, it's open, men are able to vote. They're trying to make it so that you can, but they are able to vote. It's given you, we've got a way to get there. We've got a voice. We've got people that are saying we want to represent you. We do not, however, allow women to have the vote yet. So a woman at this time period, this is turn of the century, was basically, at the mercy of her husband, father, brothers, uncle, whatever. A woman was not considered she was thought to have not have the emotional capability of casting an intelligent ballot, meaning that we would get a runaway, our emotions, we couldn't trust our emotions because we would not be able to handle it. We would be like, oh, I can't vote. Give me the vapors. I'm so stressed out. Whatever. Come on. And so they said, oh, you're too delicate of a creature to vote. Give me a break. Obviously, they haven't met Louisiana women, right? So with the 19th Amendment in what year was it? I don't know the actual year. Lo siento. No. What? The nation's... Oh, sorry. 1918. And they finally got 1920. Sorry, I was reading a different thing here. They actually gave women the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. Now, this was very hard fought by many, many brave women that really stuck their necks out there and said, hey, we want to vote. Because they were met not only with people saying, no, you can't do that. It was much more violent and really scary. And these women went out there and they said, hey, give us the right to vote. And we did it. You know, go ahead, girls, girl power, right? And finally, in 1920, that amendment was pretty much cemented in there, and women finally had the right to vote. All women. So now all men and all women were officially citizens, voting citizens represented by the United States government. Now, that's not to say that this was fair and balanced, but in the Constitution, it had now said that every woman and man in this country had the right to vote. So, that's a big deal. So, all right, that's all that I've got for you guys today. Make sure that you put in this code word for your code word quiz. Remember, the code word that's down here is not the same code word that's on your code word exit ticket. So don't mix them up, because that does happen. So that's all I've got for you guys today. I will see you in class where we will be reviewing more of the Chapter 8, Part 2. We'll talk a little bit more about women's voting, the suffrage movement, and the ways that the court case of Plessy versus Ferguson and the disenfranchisement of black and poor white voters. So, without further ado,